Hey, it's Josh. Welcome to Consume the Canon. So, what I thought I wanted to do for this episode is I want to take a look back at the first quarter of the Canon. So, right now I'm about 20 something percent through, 28, 30%, almost 30%. But I want to look back. Someone asked me, if you could recommend, a list of items that you absolutely had to consume if you wanted to go through the canon, what would that list be? So I thought that I would start with the first 25%, give you my rundown of what is absolutely essential for the first 25% of the Star Wars canon, and we would do this for each one of the quartiles as we got through them. So let's start off with the essential items for the first 25% of the Star Wars canon. So I'm going to make kind of a weird recommendation. I'm going to recommend not watching the prequel trilogy. Now, I'm not one of those people who's like, Jar Jar, the movies are terrible. Objectively, they're not great. And if you love them, watch them. But if you only really care about getting the main content from the prequel trilogy, I suggest reading the graphic novel. It tells the exact same story. It has dialogue from the film, but it also has great artwork, great design, and it keeps it very compact and succinct. It cuts out a lot of the extraneous stuff that's in there, and it really just focuses on the main story. It gives you everything you need with all the additional stuff that doesn't really help tell the story of the prequel trilogy. So that's the first thing you want to do. Read yourself the graphic novel. After that, I'd go with the 5-issue Obi-Wan and Anakin limited series. Now, I've talked about this before. This limited series is great. It really boils down. There's a bunch of different places where we learn about Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship and Obi-Wan's struggles and should I have a Padawan, etc. This boils it all down into one series. Plus, it tells a really interesting story, and depending on who you talk to, it has an appearance of Darth Revan. But if you really want to get that relationship, this is the place to do it. This 5-issue series covers all the bases of the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. After that, I would skip right to Clone Wars, and specifically the first episodes of Clone Wars in chronological order that are basically the siege on Christophsis. So the 2 episodes and then the Clone Wars film. Now this is essential because you have to have the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka. So being able to set up that relationship and then being able to fulfill that relationship through the film gives you the beginnings of what that relationship is going to be. It's really a phenomenal way to provide early context in what the relationship is. There's tons of foreshadowing in this. But, if you're going to watch Clone Wars and you're going to watch Star Wars, you have to see the beginning of Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship together. After this, I'm going to skip all the way to the end of Season 1. Yes, there's some good stuff in Season 1, but no, I don't really consider any of it essential to the canon. But I do consider Liberty over Ryloth and the Ryloth trilogy of episodes at the end of Season 1 essential. It gives us tons of context. It tells us about how the Jedi are interacting with independent planets. It introduces us to Cham Syndulla. It shows us places that the Jedi struggle with their battle against the Separatists. It lays a lot of groundwork for future stories that it would be confusing without this early context. So the trilogy of episodes at the end of Season 3 telling about the siege in Ryloth, absolutely essential for Star Wars canon viewing. After that, we jump to Season 2, starting with Episode 4, Senate Spy, and then the 5-episode arc around the Battle of Geonosis, the second Battle of Geonosis. This is obviously important for a number of reasons. It's a huge early victory for the Republic over the Separatists. There are a number of story threads that are told in here. It's some of the best battle sequences in all of Star Wars. And it starts a lot of threads as well. So this is where the Barriss Offee thread starts. This is where we're really introduced to Luminara Unduli. There's so much content here that I think is essential for you to be able to understand the depth and breadth of this conflict as we move into later seasons. We skip a couple episodes and then move to the Mandalorian arc, which is later in this season, which gives us our first glimpse of Duchess Satine and of Death Watch. It starts to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship with Satine, and Mandalore, Death Watch, Satine are going to be extremely important as we move through the canon. Not only Death Watch's relationship with Darth Maul later, but also Obi-Wan's relationship with Satine and how her death impacts him and his choices that he makes as he moves forward as a Jedi. So this episode arc is extremely essential for canon viewing. And then immediately after that, the novel Catalyst, the Rogue One novel, is also essential. The only reason I would say that it isn't essential is if you wanted to keep the surprise of the Death Star, but if you already know the Death Star is coming, then learning more about Galen Erso and Jyn Erso and Orson Krennic and all of the machinations that go along with the creation of the Death Star, if you want to have a complete vision of everything that's going on in the canon, Catalyst, a Rogue One novel, needs to be a part of that journey. There's a weird one that I'm going to grab here, and it's actually the Forces of Destiny, Ahsoka and Padme. So this is the Forces of Destiny where, the comic, where Ahsoka saves Padme from a spy handmaiden who's going to ruin a dinner that Padme is having for some political representatives. It doesn't really do anything from a canon perspective, but it is one of the first building blocks of the relationship between Ahsoka and Padme, which becomes more and more important as we get through the Clone Wars, both of them being the primary people in Anakin Skywalker's life. But this is one of the very early times where they interact with each other just one-on-one, and it's important to see that growth between these two characters. Plus, this helps them pass the Bechdel test, which is always nice. After this, we jump to season 3 and the set of 3 episode arcs telling about the creation of Savage Opress, the time that Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan spend on Mortis with the father, the son, and the daughter, and then the Citadel trilogy of episodes where we actually get our first look at Captain Tarkin. Every one of these arcs is essential, but they're all essential for different reasons. The first is giving us more of who Asajj Ventress is and how her story will play out over the course of the rest of the Clone Wars parts of the canon. It also tells us about Mortis, gives us a deeper view into the Force and how Anakin is connected to the Force. And then the Citadel gives us our first visions of Captain Tarkin, who is one of the most important characters in the rise of the Empire. And so being able to see him, his early relationship with Anakin, and also to see that he's always been kind of a prick, I think is really important to understand at even this early stage in the Clone Wars. As I said in my review of Season 4 is pretty uneven, so I'm really going to jump to the end of Season 4, where Savage Opress finds Darth Maul and helps him get his legs back, and this is when Darth Maul starts working through his plan to overcome Death Watch, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the key storylines from Season 5, so understanding where that starts, understanding how Darth Maul begins this process of becoming a galactic criminal, seeing the rise and fall of this extremely important character is essential to understanding all of the ins and outs and the ups and downs of the Star Wars canon. And then there's Season 5, which is a great season, but really the only canon-specific episodes are the ones around Savage and Darth Maul and their arc, and then the arc at the end of the season around the trial and of Ahsoka Tano, and then her leaving the Jedi Order. These are, of course, fantastic arcs. All of season 5 is really great. But if we're talking about the arcs that you need to watch if you're understanding the Star Wars canon, it is the arc of Asajj and Darth Maul, and the end of season 5 with Ahsoka Tano are the ones you really need to take with you to understand where all these characters are going and how they interact with the broader Star Wars universe. As far as season 6 is concerned, the only real arc that's important is the last 4 episodes of the season around Sifo-Dyas and Yoda interacting with the Wills. Even this is a little sketchy. You could probably skip it if you needed to, but it's definitely the high point of season 6. It gives us an understanding, much like the episodes on Mortis, of a deeper power that exists within the Force, namely the Wills. And it also gives us a few hints into how the Clone Wars really started in the first place with Sifo-Dyas and requesting the soldiers from the Geonosians, etc., etc. So if you really want to kind of end cap everything with the Clone Wars, this arc is the thing that would do it. I'm going to skip a lot of stuff here. Dark Disciple, Son of Dathomir, a couple other comics, and I'm going to get right to the first couple of issues of Canon, the Last Padawan. The reason why I want to focus on these is because they give us a glimpse into what it was like when Order 66 happened. We see it at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but only kind of fleeting. Being able to see it through the eyes of a Jedi, especially a Padawan, who we are going to be much more engaged with during the Rebels television series, I think is really important for us to understand. So these first couple of issues of Last Padawan, definitely want to get on and read them to get the full context of the canon up until this point. After that is everything from Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. And I mean everything, every single issue. There's other things that come out around this time, but every issue of Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith is essential for the sheer reason that it gives you the understanding of how Darth Vader kills Anakin once and for all. How Darth Vader separates himself from the Jedi that was Anakin Skywalker. Every issue gives you a little bit more. It gives you a little more detail. It gives you a little bit more understanding. And the more of that you have, the richer this already richly detailed character becomes, making him a truly tragic, iconic villain. You can get by without reading these issues, but you're going to miss so much of the nuance of Darth Vader if you don't cover the entire 25-issue run of Dark Lord of the Sith. And then finally, in the first 25%, the first quartile is Tarkin, the novel. There are a couple of novels that came out here, Ahsoka, Lords of the Sith, but Tarkin is the only one that is essential. We learn so much about Wilf Tarkin during this, and it provides, you can go back and watch my review of Tarkin. I'm not going to recap it here, but I will say I love Tarkin. It's my favorite novel up until this point, and right now I've read 12 or 13 of them. Tarkin is my favorite novel. I would stop and read it right now if I could. I highly recommend it, and it gives so much context to the choices, the character that is Wilf Tarkin, that I have to believe that anyone who really wanted to understand the canon from both the Empire's perspective and from the Rebellion's perspective needs to go out and read Tarkin. And that's it for the essentials of the first quarter of the canon. I will do this again once I'm halfway through, which, if I remember correctly, is right around A New Hope. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I'll be coming back every week with more content about the things that I've been covering in the previous week. But until I come back, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. And this is Josh. Thanks for watching Consume the Canon.